often talk about how men are strong and don't show weakness. But we do come together esangweni sibobokelane, and it would most likely sound like this. Kude lokwehlula indvodza. As a father, you epitomize strength, leadership, and unconditional love. You gladly make sacrifices to give your children what you never had. Inzima loyidlalako kulomliba loya embili. Imcoka. Timfundziso takho tisimamisa titukulwane. There are some things that only dads can teach, like how to be resilient in hardship, courageous in the face of challenges, and kind to all. Siyakuncoma ngendlela lovikela ngayo umndeni wakho. Usibonele lesihle, uyindvodza levulela bomake ematfuba, creating a gender-equal future, raising men that will be better. Noma kulukhuni, awupheli emandla, siyabonga babe. To all our dads, thank you for always being there, for supporting our dreams and guiding our ways. From the bank that cares, we...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the very, very first ever virtual Lisango session, proudly brought to you by Standard Bank. And it is the bank that cares. And seeing that Standard Bank really cares about men in particular, they have decided to set up a grand session whereby men will come together and have conversations on mental health, physical well-being, spiritual well-being, and of course, everything that needs to be discussed. My name is Mfundo Simelane, aka Dosh Robengoni, and I will be your host for today. Right next to me, I have not one, not two, but three wise men. I hope they are from the East. They bring nothing but frankincense, emotional support, mental well-being, and spiritual upliftment. Gentlemen, would you please introduce yourselves?
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Churchard. I'm the founder and executive director of Gwaka in Votsa.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Clement Dlamini Kosnati from the University of Eswatini. I am the director for the Center for Community Services, and I'm a social work lecturer under the Department of Sociology and Social Work.
That's the whole everything. Yes, the third wise man.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Sfiso. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession. I'm also a son and a brother and a friend and a supportive resource for others. So I'm all of those things. But here I'm in my role professionally as a clinical psychologist.
Right.
I'm based in Manzini, Bremandosh.
Yeah, little prema silicona. Please do follow us on each and every social media platform. We are available on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Follow, comment, and follow the conversation. It's going to be a beautiful day. I hope you guys at home have just tuned in and you're calling your friends to tell a friend and tell a friend. Remember, Standard Bank is the bank that cares. Mr. Churchard, me and you have met in so many different spheres, and we've had these conversations, especially considering the fact that man and you are a part of Gwaka Involves, the founder. What are the things that you have found as the perfect ideology in as far as the role and responsibility of a father is concerned? And maybe you can touch on positive masculinity as well.
Sure. So maybe we can take the second part of your question first. So let's talk a bit more about positive masculinity. We all have a gender identity. Mm-hmm. We know that as we go through life, we all associate ourselves and identify ourselves and identify others through their genders. So I want you to imagine a circle.
Yeah.
And around the circumference of that circle, you've got on one side femininity,
yeah,
and on the other side masculinity. And then all of us sort of we respond daily, and in the society around us respond to different elements of our own self-actualization. So how we dress, how we look, how we act, our attitudes, the language we use, and all of that corresponds to somewhere on that circle.
Yeah.
I can wake up one day feeling particularly masculine. I can wake up another day feeling particularly feminine. It's just It's how we identify.
For example, you did makeup today.
I did make up to get on this show, and I felt amazing doing it. So thank you, Ndosh. That took you 2 minutes before you told the world.
Feminine side.
Exactly. So as we go through life, obviously that changes, and we can change our identity just like we do as we go through life. We play different roles. We do different jobs in our home, in our community, in society. So in terms of positive masculinity, what we're saying is elements of men, or those who identify as men, and they can look and interrogate their own masculinity, that side of the spectrum, and say what is negative about, what are the negative consequences of me fulfilling some of these gender roles in society? What is the consequences of me living up to social expectations of masculinity? And when we do that, we can say to ourselves, well, actually, some of that I like, and is positive, is holistically good for me and my family, my community. And some of it is actually quite harmful. Some of it ends up, with negative consequences, whether it's violence or mental health issues or whatever. And women can do the same thing. We can all do this. And so positive masculinity is really just asking men to reflect on their own image of masculinity, their own understanding, their own identity, and to keep the best and to get rid of the rest. Or to change, to sort of identify as a new man for a new 21st century. So when we talk about roles, it's a bit difficult then if we're saying we need to sort of reflect on those roles and change those roles to then say, well, what are the new roles? So it's difficult to understand what a man should or shouldn't do, because we're really talking about human beings, and we wouldn't want to say to half of the population, this is what you should do, this is the role you should play. So men can be anything they want to be, just like women can, and should be able to, as long as it's through a process of reflection and through keeping the best elements and changing some elements that are more harmful to us in society.
So you are encouraging the whole, how can I put it? You are encouraging everyone and every individual that is a male to actually explore on what they would want to be. And the modern day father could technically be appealing to your own context. And not actually nibble maybe from societal norm. Get down road, the MR3, straight into Manzini, Bremerstov. Mr. Chabangu, how has the whole landscape of being a man changed over time, and how does this actually affect the man's mental health?
It's changed in various ways, and it's been very significant ways, right? We come from parents who come from parents who come from parents before them. So we are in spaces where we learn from the big people, which are the guys above us. We are parents who learn from grandparents. And now, since our focus is on men, we inherit a cultural system from the spaces where we grow up in. So if I come up in a home where diapers are not changed, right? So in this home, that role is a female role. There's no pampers for daddy. So it's a mom thing. So I will sort of inherit that. And no one is going to sit me down and say, okay, that is for women. But I'm learning socially, right? So that example is just one example of stuff that we inherit, right? So we learn that. And then I get to a space where I have to father myself. I get to a space where I have to be a male myself, right? And in that space, I'm coming with the history that I'm carrying. And I use that history with my own space, in my own family. And when I do that, I practice what I've learned, right? But there's also new things that come into manhood and that can come from each generation. So one of the big changes that we've had, for example, is technology, it's information, right? So suddenly we have the plethora of information. You can just access 1 million things on your phone now. So with that comes different resources for what being a man is. So there's different spaces that are now informing you on what being a man is. It's no longer just your grandfather and your dad. It's no longer just the church. It's no longer just the community. It's no longer just the guys at the football field. It's now people in the States informing you, people
Yeah.
in Canada informing you on what it means. And so you're exposed to all of this information, and then you sort of absorb it, right? So it's this whole idea that we're not
Religion and how men can really cope in such trying times, because I think the dynamic has totally changed. Everything, the whole landscape has changed. What would modern men try to do in order for them to actually adapt to everything that's going on these days?
I like the fact that you are using the word adapt.
Yeah, because I feel like it's adaptation time.
yeah, it's critical. I think I'm actually listening to the conversation. One of the fundamental issues that we want to really deal with is, starting point would be, are we able to communicate our feelings, right? Now religion is religion, and its rigidity in terms of its definition would prescribe some ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But then religion will also push a negative standpoint where patriarchy is concerned, which then at the same time takes us back to what's the word? So if we speak about modern men, I always run away or shy away from the word modern man. I just want to speak about men. Yes. Because a man is a man, whether he's in 2020 or 2036, he'll still be a man. But I'm going to borrow your word adaptability. The way for us to adapt is to embrace that we are in a new era. We are living in a new season, and there are pressures that we face that others that were here before us did not really face. I like what the analogy Dr. Sfiso was using, that everything has completely changed. I am a father who might have to father other children who are raised in a different space. So what will happen is that because I am entrenched in a particular belief system, I will find myself indoctrinating them with what I believe in. And not allow them to fly, because I know no other but what I believe in. So there is then the need for me to have a conversation that's beyond just my religious scope. I need to be as wide as possible, but at the same time be able to know, to sift what I think is important. Now, that's me. I think what is important for the ones that I'm fathering.
Yes.
But they have access to information. They have seen other things or other ways of doing things, which they might communicate, and they might clash with my belief system. That's when the rubber hits the road. So it then becomes important for us to then get back to the place of conversation. Let's converse. Let's discuss. Let's find out what it is that we are battling with. I'll make a quick example and I'll come back to I'll give it back to you. We did a training of pastors in Shiselweni. And we discussed the issue of the SOTV. I'm just
got a lot to unlearn, I think, both men and women, but particularly men. As was said earlier, we grow up in homes that are increasingly unstable, fragmented, broken, one might say, and that's really the new norm now. We're only talking about 1 in 5 young people growing up in a home that has a typical biological mother, biological father, living under the same roof. 4 out of 5 of us now grow up in homes that are different in their makeup to that. And that has meant that we often need to readjust how we consider ourselves and how we consider gender roles, going forward as well. When we give, when you go to the toy shop, for instance, you see that. And I'm a dad of 2 girls, so we go to the toy shop every now and again, and you'll see that it's very gendered. On this side of the aisle, you have the boys' toys, and on this side of the aisle, you have the girls' toys. And the girls' toys are domesticated and to do with caring roles, and from a very to enter into those kind of spaces. And from a very early age, if you go to the boys' aisle, you're seeing cars and guns and dinosaurs and so on and so forth. And you're encouraging a very different set of social principles and a very different psychological development, And then we wonder why, when we see mass shootings in other countries, why the vast, vast majority of those mass shootings are committed by men. When we see domestic violence in this country and around the world, the vast majority of it is committed by men. When we see crime, and violent crime especially, the vast majority is committed by men. And as you mentioned earlier, suicide and mental health issues are very much, or committed suicide, so men who commit and finish the suicide attempt are often male. So we find that we've got a lot to unlearn as we go forward. We talked about communication, and that's a really important thing. That's one way that we can unlearn. We can challenge ourselves, I think, and other men. You know, we talk about microaggressions when men talk about, objectifying women, or when men talk about violence in a very light way, or they use derogatory language, even in a joke. That is one way of reinforcing some of the patriarchal norms that we experience as a society. So, and by doing that, even on a very small scale, when you're with your friends, when you're hanging out, when you're at the gym, wherever, you can work towards shifting that needle a little bit from something that is reinforcing patriarchy to something that is challenging it. And by doing so, we can open up conversations for men that are freer. We can find out stuff about ourselves that we wouldn't have been able to find out before. And so we can actually fulfill our own potential by doing so. And that's a really exciting part of this conversation. And Sifiso said it earlier, we're starting to see some real progress whereby men are saying, actually, this is limiting and harmful. And it makes me something that is very boxed, and that it puts me in a position where I can't fulfill my potential. And the same is true of women. And women, of course, live in society where they're very much expected to dress in a certain way, be a certain thing, act and speak in a certain way in order to comply with femininity. But we as men need to be having those conversations, and practiced from a very early age at having conversations. So, because society allows them to do so. We are often told that we can't speak. We can't show feelings. We can't show emotions. We can't have these spaces. And so by doing so, even this platform is a step of progress. So, and by doing so, we'll end up, I'm convinced of it, we'll end up alleviating a number of those social ills you mentioned earlier, and building a society that's better for everyone.
I think those are very insightful suggestions. More so because I think the toy setup is something that I actually took note a couple of days ago. Like in any shop, you'll find the toys are on the side. The girls they need to take off their dolls and everything. And then on the boys' side, it's always guns, cars, policemen. There's an army there, So it's always a flight or fight. And in this case, it's fight with the boys. I also have paid attention to how the whole developmental structure encourages a girl child to feel, and then a boy child how not to feel. I say this because with girls, when they get hurt, it's always tula sisi, tula nana, hu ntamshaya. And with the boy child, it's always once they get hurt, they'll always be told, you don't be a girl. Sure. You can't be a lady now. And that way we confine the whole feeling station, that's what I call it. We confine the whole feeling station because we don't want to be a girl, And some of the time, it's always, once the girl gets hurt, they always rush with a Band-Aid solution. And this time around, on the boys' side, once he gets hurt, So that way we learn not to feel. And we get to an age from 16. That's when we start the whole feeling thing. Now we feel for someone. And unfortunately, the girls are much more developed in the whole feeling structure. They are ahead, and we're playing a whole catch-up game. Doctor, how can men deal with these challenges?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
And where should they go to like to seek help?
Okay, there's a million challenges that men are facing, right? But the biggest one for me is that you can't deal with it until you get to a space where you start recognizing that there's something to be dealt with, right? So, and because of that dynamic, what we're seeing is we have a lot of stats on women and what happens with them, and one of the things you mentioned, for example, is that we see men completing more suicides, right? But what we don't have is the data saying what's going on with this man to this point.
Oh, yeah,
Right? So all everyone knows is that men commit suicide.
Okay.
And that's what we know.
Yeah.
But we don't know what's going on before this point of saying, you know what, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot that we don't know still about what's going on with us to certain points and making certain decisions, right? So the problem with that is that when we intervene, we focus on the suicide. And the suicide is more symptomatic. It's just a symptom of, you know what, stuff's been bubbling under, and I have nowhere to put it, and I don't even know that I have stuff that's bubbling under that I have to put somewhere, right? So what we then see is that because if you don't deal with the stuff deals with you.
Oh, yes.
It's going to come out. There's no way around that. Your biology just refuses to keep stuff down. It's like cancer. It's just going to keep bubbling until it's addressed and taken out of the body, right? So it comes out in suicide. It comes out in gender-based violence. It comes out in filling up taverns. It comes out in all sorts of ways, right? And it's like at a national consciousness level, we almost know that men will end up in the spaces. And then the spaces are just created in a way that says men will end up here, right? For example, in our country, we have about 12 correctional facilities.
Yeah.
Only one is for females, right?
I think they just have to one cater for
Yeah.
females as well. So
One is for females, adolescents, grown-up females, just one.
just one.
The rest are for males. And they're overcrowded and they're full, right? So these things take us somewhere. You look at hospitals, you look at the psychiatric hospital, it's full of males. They're just revolving doors and they're coming, they're out, in, out, in, out. And all of that says there's a lot of stuff that just ends somewhere. You look at drinking spaces, you look at all of the spaces, it's just full of us. So I was saying that to say we can't deal with it until we're aware that there's a dealing that needs to happen, right? So the starting point would be that for me. It would be Lisango, it would be Injobo, it would be all of these things. And these things are not new, culturally speaking. People have been having Lisango, people have been having Kudliwa Wenhlobo. So there's been all of these things culturally where there was conversation, right? And with evolving and you leaving home and going to live in a flat, all of the systems got lost, right? And so we need to start sort of talking about the fact that there is stuff to be talked about and stuff to be addressed, right? And that is why I was saying this is one such platform. And then also there are other spaces that we occupy. There's, Tom mentioned gyms, there's churches, there's all of the spaces where men are. And so one of the ways is to start introducing these conversations in our spaces already, right? So one of the ways is to say, I'm mad at the wife because she looked at my phone and she saw something. It was all innocent, right? So I'm not talking to her. And so you can say, while working out, that actually you were wrong for having done that, right? So you are the one and they say, oh, okay. And then they go. And then, so that's moved the needle a little bit towards a healthier relationship on that end. And then the same person calls you the next time and they says, okay, this is going on now. While it's not formal, it's not concrete, so the spaces are there already. It's just also an issue of adding conversation into those spaces, right? And there's also a huge under-resourcing, though, in terms of our health system. We are just severely, and we've worked in, so we have all of these spaces that are trying to just play their part. So as I say, right? You are just each doing your part. So we have all of these tiny spaces that men can start visiting and Googling and thinking about. But none of that happens if I don't realize that there's a dealing to be done. There's conversations to be had. So we stay stuck. So I usually say, what happens to you at home becomes home, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the stuff that you get stuck in it until you sort of unlearn it and move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way that you're dropping bars, you know. And if anything, what I'd really like to echo in what you just said, because you are really promoting what Tom usually preaches about, the element of brotherhood, that we need to be our own safe spaces. We need to be each other's safe spaces again. Because the minute someone confides in you, especially about the phone issue, and then you start speaking about it in an office setup whereby maybe I'm not comfortable with everyone knowing about what really went on Ekaya, you are basically invalidating that someone's feelings, because Ksasa, it's something much more bigger is going to happen. And I will not be able to be comfortable to have a conversation with anyone. And just like you say, it gets piled up, and eventually I say, well, I have no one to talk to, because the first person that I actually talked to put out my dirty laundry. So I'm not comfortable in having these conversations with people. Pastor Clay, if you'd be kind enough, would you describe a gender equal society, and how can men navigate the new societal norms in the light of, well, some of the traditional gender roles that still exist in our nation?
Let me sit up straight.
I hope they're not going to call you a sellout after this one.
No, they won't. No, they won't. See, I just want to borrow something. You know, as the discussion was going on, I was thinking, you know, there's something we usually use when we speak. We always say it's always not helping to actually wipe the floor, find the roles before we can even think about gender equality. What are these roles? Who defines them? Can me and my wife in my house define our own gender roles? And yes, we can. Because when we are married, I'm talking about married people. I'm a pastor, by the way. So when we are married, when we are married, I'm not talking about other things. When we are married, we are actually at the same level. We are the same. We are not. There's no difference. So we are there trying to define our own culture of doing things, and our kids see us do what we do, and then they learn from us, and we expect them in the future to define their own way of doing things. See, that's how it. So I don't want to even speak about gender roles. I just want us to as anyone who's watching and listening to this, we really need to define what is comfortable, what works for us, so that we can be able to live peaceably with each other. Otherwise, the moment we then stereotype it and say this is what the role is, that's the role, then we miss the point. I spoke about diapers earlier, like you said. I was telling people how it is so glorious and beautiful for you to remove a diaper from your child. The face that they show, the playing of the legs, and even the pee that they throw on your face. They are liberated and free. And when they see it's daddy that's doing it, not mommy. You know, there's an attachment, the attachment issue. You spoke about touch, physical touch, hugging your child, telling them that you love them. That's what we should be doing. Then in the future, they'll define how they want to live. So for me, I really don't want to get bogged down with issues of who should be doing that and who shouldn't be doing that. I mean, if we were to talk about finances, we would.
Yes.
You know.
Well, you are in a financial institution.
Oh yeah,
I'm
a financial
so you're safe.
Yeah, I'm safe. Some others, when they have to get money, they have to look away to give you $10 for bread. Because see, those are the things. My wife will call me and say, please bring some bread. I'll bring some bread, even if there's money that I gave her at the end of the month, or there's money that she gave me, and she's driving my car. She can fill it up without feeling like I'm doing a role for a man.
Okay.
You see?
There's a whole lot that we need to learn from you. I think there's a whole lot that you're highlighting, and you're encouraging men to be their best versions of themselves. What does this mean for an average man? I'm not going to use the modern day men now. What does this mean? Because I think the Dr. Shabango also spoke about going to the child's play. I mean, we've done a whole lot of plays. We've been speech day, and we never really saw our parents, you know, and we got comfortable with it. Even like if you had your parent come for a play or speech day or a choral competition, you'd be the odd one out with you know. And now we're learning that the support has always been necessary.
Yes.
It's just that we have always found a way on how to suppress it. So again, what does this mean for men to become the best versions of themselves?
So I think it means that men, we've spoken a lot about, you know, the challenges that men go through, and perhaps you could say that, you know, we've said over the last few minutes that men are broken and they need to, you know, unlearn things and all of this sort of finger pointing that I wanted to sort of move away from. It's true, and I think that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we do need to do a lot of this. We need to walk this journey as men, but we also need to understand that we're walking the journey as part of the problem, in order that we may become part of the solution as well. We need to have faith in ourselves that, you know, given the position that society puts on us, both as humans and as men living in patriarchies, we have a special privilege and a special power to address some of that privilege and power in order to grow and be better. And not to maybe succumb to some of the ways that society has dealt with the problem, right? So your speech day, your school play, you're the only parent there.
Yeah.
And you're worried that your child is going to be mocked because, or you know, they're going to laugh or bully the child because you're the only parent there. That's a symptom of the problem. Not that's a way that society has tried to adapt to the problem of absentee parenting in general. It's not because that's the best way that we want to raise children. You know, children, and there's a lot of evidence to support that children who have two loving parents or grow up in roles in homes where there are loving parent figures, whether it's biological or otherwise, do remarkably better holistically across their lives. You know, they do better in school, they do better in their careers, they do better in their social lives, their relationships are better, they have better intimacy in future relationships, and so on and so forth. So, and this isn't speculation. This is fact, science. Both from the medical and the social point of view. And so we need to ask ourselves that, you know, if we want to be the best society that we can and achieve the best Eswatini in the next 50 years that we can, we need to be talking to this generation and providing them with the best start. And science says the best start is attending that speech day, attending that school play, being there and telling your son that if they don't want to play soccer, that's okay. If they want to do something else, that's okay. And that you'll support them and love them, ask how their day is, support them with their homework, show them that we have walked a journey, and that journey ends with, or a part of that journey is diapers and washing up and all of that kind of stuff. It's not nobody's saying it's a glamorous journey, but it's a journey that at the end of the day, when we are old, we will have raised children who can look after us, who can enjoy the full benefits of life, who can be happy and healthy and prosperous in their own spaces. And as I said, science even says, in general, they're wealthier. And so gender equality makes a holistic sense for society as a whole, and for us as individuals. Because when we are at the end of our lives, we have family that show us the same compassion, show us the same financial support, the same, and ask how our day was, and don't leave us and and suffer the ills of poor relationships themselves. So.
Tom, may you please be my father. Before we take an ad break, Dokotela, I know you have so much on conversation, communicating. There's there's just one slight problem that I think may be there. I am thinking about it. I've seen it, and I think it's there because normally I think we hear men say, "Ya mina ngikhuluma kakhulu, ayangifuni ukukhuluma." They shut that communication system line, and they don't want to engage. They don't encourage it. Is there a way in which we can try to restructure that ground and have men more engaging, more communicating, and especially their feelings, like you said in the beginning? Is there a way whereby we can easily encourage them?
Okay. I don't know about easily, but
Because there won't be any rewards, right?
Yeah.
Communicate and have 500 in Malangin.
yeah, so maybe. The things that we do, right, as human beings generally, our lives are habits, right? And habits are things that we learn. And so the things that we engage in, the way we figure out communication is, for example, "Angikhulumi kakhulu," right? It's a learned thing. It's not a fixed thing, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to go back to my point of informing, right? So people, the way they are, for example, the way men are, I'm one of them, is that it's not a fixed state. "Angikhulumi kakhulu," it's a learned thing. It's a thing I teach my
Can be
brain every
changed.
time,
Yeah.
right? So I can also unlearn it and learn something new. So it's things that happen to us, and one of the things that happen to us, we come up in a home that says, "Shut up, be quiet," right? One of the things that comes, that one of the many things that we learn also is we come up in spaces where bigger people in the community, even outside of home, are saying, "Hey, don't talk too much. Talking that much is for women." So again, the message is be quiet, right? And when you do try to express, and when you do try to say, there are all sorts of things thrown your way, right? Maybe there's this problem with you, or there's that problem, or you're talking a lot. Just give us 2 seconds, right? So you are encouraged to go silent, right? And as you develop, it works for you, right? So that behavior is fed, and then it becomes a habit. It's rewarded. You're rewarded for your silence. Because if you go quiet, we don't shout at you. If you go quiet, we'll take you to have ice cream. If you go quiet, then we'll go to visit Auntie so-and-so. If you don't talk too much, this will be your reward, right? So it's reinforced. You learn it, it's rewarded. And then it becomes you, and you practice it, right? So it's not a fixed state. It's learned behavior. And so the trick, it's to just try and learn something else. Learn something new. Learn to communicate. Learn to send a text, right? Learn
Same
to...
way you learn FIFA.
Yeah. So exactly the same way you learn FIFA, right? And what things like that have done, for example, now that you're touching on FIFA, is they've made people who game communicate via the web. So you are playing and you're talking to that one and you're talking to that one. So it's not a bad space. It's a space that's teaching a lot of things, right? And so there's a million ways to do it, but it's just a matter, again, of realizing that actually this is not a fixed point. I can talk about things. The next person understand, right? So then I don't even learn to ask for what I need. So what that means also is I won't know how to be a partner in a relationship then, right? So that stuff's just going to build up. But because it has to come out, it's not meant to be in there. It's going to be a punch at a point. It's going to be me shouting. It's going to be me just coming in and just, when they hear your car coming into the yard, everyone just goes to their rooms. You know? So that's terrible. It's not a good thing.
Some people are reminiscing when you say that.
So that's not a good thing. That's what we've learned about this person as people in this household, that a male is a thing to be feared in a home, right? So it's learning to put all of those things into perspective, and just that you can learn it. The thing you're doing now, stuff happened to you, you adapted it, and you're using it to survive. So you can now learn something else. Yeah, you can let go of that defense thing that you are using. You can actually say, you know what, I'm struggling with this. I need your support with this. You know, I know this is what we agreed I would do, but this month I can't. So can you help me out with this? Right? So you can start it in tiny doses. You don't have to go big. You can just start it in small doses. Yeah.
Oh, well, It is the bank that cares, and we are going to take a quick ad break because everybody in this room is dropping bars. I did say there are 3 wise men, and because I'm the lead, I could be the star. To the break. I'm really hoping that we are going to get most of the questions from the social media to hear what they have to say or they need to say. But thank you so much for joining us. Please do not change the dial at home. I need us to discuss on some of the support programs that are actually available for men in particular to access. I know you are the founder, but do we have any other? But yes, you may go into detail with what you have in stock.
So of course there's an increasingly large space for men. It's a supply and demand thing as well. I think we've established that there is a little bit more supply than there was before now, but we also need the demand, and we're seeing that there's a lot of men who are showing demand for support, whether it's psychosocial support, violence, anger management, issues at work, issues in their relationships, sexual health, and so we're starting to see that men are being more open and more forthcoming in demanding these services. Obviously, Gwaka Invodza provides a number of those services, both the kind of group sessions that we run for fathers and expectant fathers, and then the sessions for younger boys. But also, we would encourage, of course, from Gwaka Invodza to be reaching out to other institutions as well. The church does an awful lot, and there's men's groups and men's forums in church spaces coming up all the time. Clement, I'm sure you'll talk about that in a second. And then more and more professional help aimed towards men as well. So although we've still got a very nascent field, it's still very early days. I think the demand is there, and all I would say is just reach out, make that first step, and we'll ensure that the supply, whether it's religious, whether it's psychological, whether it's social, matches that demand too.
Yeah. Mr. Clark? Mr. Lamin? Yeah.
Yes, we have quite a bit. We have one that we do every morning at 6:30 a.m. on Saturdays. It's a virtual one. It's a men talk session. We don't speak religion only. We speak social issues, mental health, quite a number of finance. We just go on all out with regards to issues of men. It's a channel that's dedicated to men. We do it every Saturday without fail at 6:30 a.m. And then we have one we do every month. It's also called Men's Talk. And we have one that's coming this weekend at Mantenga. Yeah. Also, it just involves everyone. It's not a church-based one, but it's doctors and other friends that are coming in together and addressing issues that concern men. They are men forums only. Then we have others that we do in our churches. I know quite a number of gentlemen are actually coming up with these nice discussions, and we are discussing very hardcore issues. Yeah. We're speaking about sexual health, we're speaking about mental health, finance, relationships, and all sorts of things that we discuss. So we have platforms that we use in the church. I'm not in the church space only, but yes, that's what we do.
Yeah. Yes, Dogotela.
I'm not doing anything. These guys are shining down. Okay, so I am in private practice. Yeah. So I see men individually, but I am interested in building something, and I'm trying to work towards it. In building a program, a resilience-based program. But for me, it's not men; it's more adolescent age groups, because they're also a neglected population, right? So when you say to me at 16 you started loving people, we'll talk about it some other time. Yeah. So adolescents are a neglected population, especially the boys in that range. We usually just respond to them because they're smoking now, they're drinking now, and they slept out now, and that's when we see them, right? And so there is this giant gap of just an absence of until I do something perceived to be negative, and then I exist. So there's this population that I'm interested in doing work with, but also not in the urban space, in like rural spaces where there's zero of this happening, right? And a large chunk of our population in this country lives in rural spaces, but there aren't the services going on there. So it's not a thing that's happening, it's a thing that's in process. Yeah.
I think I would like to be a part of that one. Please, we will try to unlearn the 16-year-old me. Well, we have a couple of engagements from our social media platform. Samgeliso Hlatshwago says, I love this conversation. I just realized that there's so much we need to unlearn, or realized. It was supposed to be realized. Realized that there's so much that we need to learn in as far as society is concerned. Lambo Schuster says, good conversation, a lot to be dealt with, and I hope there's more of these platforms, not only on socials, but even at ground level, homes, schools, churches, communities, and I think Tom is doing a great job in that sphere. This one I'll throw to anyone in the panel. I think Sfiso tried to decipher it. We've been having a conversation from the time we started. Tabiso Njoko says, unlearning something is hard because it is embedded in your personality. If Sfiso was a lecturer, I think he'd be closing the script now. Unlearning something is hard because it is embedded in your personality and your view of life. Is that true? I'm all for the unlearning, if it can be read.
But from a sociological perspective, behavior can be learned,
Yes,
and behavior can be unlearned. It's true. He's also right to say it's a difficult process. I'll make a typical example. I also struggle. I know Tom thinks, when I say this all the time, he thinks I'm just being funny.
Yeah.
I also have very difficult times dealing with my own feelings. So I really struggle in that space in terms of how, when I want to communicate and when I feel like I really want to say what I want to say and I slow down and then end up not saying what I wanted to say because I've now cooled down. But this thing was troubling me and I needed to actually say it. I end up not saying it. And I've figured out it doesn't help me. So it's a behavior I've been trying to deal with for the past 10 years, 10, 15 years. Yeah. So it's difficult, but I am learning, I'm finding skills, I'm reading things, I'm talking to people. I think what's helping is talking to people and probably being part of these forums that are actually, they're called fora, right? Yeah. These forums that I attend, forget about fora. These forums that I attend, I pick up a lot of things from. People tell me about ways to deal with it. Others say text and send a text. You send a text and it's not responded to, right? When you want it in the heat of the moment, and it's not responded to. It's not even blue ticked. It's just one tick. So you're thinking, I actually spent time writing the text and communicating my emotions. It was never responded to. It wasn't seen at the time I needed to. Yeah. When it's responded to, I'm okay now. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that feeling that I had is gone. Yeah. It's there. So it's like going to the gym. Yeah. You do it all the time. Yeah. Until you actually figure out the body that you want. Yeah.
Why do I feel like you envy that body?
Oh yeah, I do. When I saw him coming, I was like, wow, man.
Yeah, yes, Tom.
I think we're not saying that we need to just wake up one day and be sort of changed, transformed men and don the cape and mask. Yeah. And become superheroes. It's a gradual process. I think the important thing is to see a goal and to see progress and to start trying slowly. I mean, as I say, to use the gym analogy, you don't go to the gym and expect after 1 week to come out with abs and chiseled and a triangular kind of shape. It takes time, and you have to try and apply, and over time you sometimes fall off. Yeah. And of course we all fall off. We all we all in our personal and social lives, make mistakes. It's but their willingness to try, the willingness to learn, and the understanding of where we want to be, is a really important first step, I think.
Okay. I think that's nice. Yes, Dr. What would you say to our friend that finds it difficult to unlearn?
Oh, okay. When you learn, right, you teach your brain a particular way of behaving. The same way you don't even think about brushing your teeth now. It's like the most normal thing in the world. But there's a time when someone was helping you hold the toothbrush, and how much to squeeze and the pressure to apply, and then up and down, and then
some are still learning.
That's a lot of conversations there, right? And so you had to learn that. You had to learn how to grab the toothbrush, how to squeeze, and then you moved to counting up, down 20, and all of those things, right? So you had to learn. And at a point in your life, there was a point in your life where that wasn't even a thing. There was no consciousness of it, right? It was just very automatic. And now we do this every morning. I'm hopeful, no. We do this every morning now, right? Without thinking. And that's what learning is. The thing becomes fixed, it becomes a habit, it becomes neutral and automatic. And you don't have to think about it, right? Because it serves you in a particular way. So when you have to unlearn something, it means you have to challenge something that's been fixed there for a very long time. Respond to that thing a particular way, right? If you see raindrops, you know rain's coming, and then you start thinking windows, right? Just because there's rain outside, you start thinking windows, laundry, all sorts of things come up in someone's head, right? So there are things that cue us to behave a particular way. Now the problem with this thing, our brains, not my head in particular, is that it functions to make us feel safe and okay and settled. So once you do anything that is sort of in the opposite direction, which is again what learning is, right? It goes into crisis, and your brain wants you to go back to this thing, which is why drug addicts are always in that cycle, right? Your brain just wants you to come back to this thing that feels safe and it knows. So I know when it's 10:30, I must go have coffee. When it's 10:30, people who smoke, I must go and smoke. When it's this, so it's just cued. It knows that. So now when it's 10:30 and you're not going to smoke, you get headaches. You get all sorts of things, right? Because your brain's expecting it. You don't have to think about it. But because you're trying to unlearn something, the discomfort will happen because your brain has to recognize new cues. So then that's the challenge. It's that you're trying to undo something, right? It's like when you have juice in a glass. You can clear it out. So you just take this water and you keep pouring it slowly into that glass. So gradually the juice pops out of that glass and you are learning new things, right? So you can't expect that process to be an easy process. But also the stuff you're letting go is stuff you've practiced for a long time. And maybe now you are 20 and you're realizing, no man, it's a terrible habit. You've done it for 20 years. So you can't then expect yourself to just let go of it, right? So then that's why it becomes difficult, because it's learning. Otherwise, if it wasn't learning, it would all be easy. Everyone would just do it.
Thank you so much, Standard Bank, for actually hosting and allowing this distinguished gentleman to host the virtual Lisango. There are words of signing out, gentlemen, before we sing goodbye, because we practiced, right? Yeah. Signing out.
Sure. Perhaps just to build one last thing on what Sophie was just saying. We mentioned the smoking analogy, and I think it's a really good one. If we all understand that there's bad health habit, that it's a bad habit and it's bad for our health and things. If in a society smoking became so morally repugnant, so absolutely so much of a gross offense that, to see somebody do it would be such a shock, surprise, you'd be offended as a fellow citizen. If that were the case, then we'd see a dramatic reduction in smoking. And the same is true of, our most repugnant, gender unequal and gender insensitive things that we do. If we as a society can come together and say that is so morally wrong, that everybody here agrees that this person, this abuser, this person that neglects his children or whatever, is so morally wrong that we're all going to collectively find you offensive.
Yeah.
Then we will change the society. That person will be compelled to work and to look inside and to have that journey that we're talking about now. So we also need to talk to women. And we can talk to men about masculinity, and we should be, but we also need to talk to women about masculinity, because part of the reason some of these young people act in a certain way is because they think it's attractive to the opposite sex. You know, we find young women saying, well, I quite like a bad boy. Somebody who, everybody can tell around that person is going to be harmful, probably lead to heartache, possibly lead them down a harmful road, and maybe even a dangerous road. But we still sometimes speak to women who say, I like bad boys. I like, men who are rough, who are, are going to treat me in a bad way.
Yeah.
And that's a complementary goal that we need to have as well. Just to say, yes, these platforms are great. Yes, let's talk to men, but let's also talk to women, and let's also talk to parents, as we've said, to make sure that we're not encouraging this in the next generation.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Dlamini?
You know, that said to a daughter or a son in public, and everyone hearing that that's my son, I'm pleased with it. Even before he does anything, right or wrong, I'm pleased with them. We really need to build words of affirmation around our kids, around our families, our wives. Our wives, where's the camera? Our wives. Our wives, we need to build words of affirmation for our wives. That's very critical, because if we don't affirm, we are actually allowing an opportunity for an opportunistic infection, actually. Someone is going to come out there with ideas that are not noble and affirm your child for whatever gains that they want to have. So we need to really, really be very, 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 very deliberate about that. Second point is the element of decisiveness. We speak to churches. You made me speak about churches. I didn't want to speak about churches. But in church, one of the things that we are lacking is the element of decisiveness. Woman comes in and says, I'm being beaten by my husband. We say they must go and pray. That's being indecisive. A decisive leader will say, give the lady enough information to assist them to make a proper decision. Otherwise, I have nothing against prayer and laying on of hands, but I really want us to start, because there's a lot of them we have in our churches. So we need to start saying, if she's coming in first time, not second time, first time, give them enough information to make a decision. I'm not saying drag them to the police and get them arrested. I'm saying give this woman or this man who's coming, because there are men also that we are seeing, by the way, who are being abused. Give them enough information to go and do what is right in terms of curtailing these behaviors. Otherwise, we are going to be bad people, and for the rest of our lives, religion will be taken as something to play with because we're not doing our duty. We deal with coping and praying, but let's deal with practical issues. Let's be decisive leaders. For me, that's a sign out.
Yeah, I think that first one is very, very important, the validation side, because really do we get validated in everything? And we miss that is my son. We miss that is my daughter. We've been hugged by a whole lot of strangers, and we love them so dearly because they've validated us in their own circles. And sometimes it's good circles, sometimes it's bad circles. Dokotela? Let's go down to Manzini.
Okay, maybe in parting, I don't know, there's just a whole lot, right? But now that we've involved physical touch into it, I just think let me talk about it for 10 seconds. I think that's also an element that we're missing, right? Like physical touch in men. It's necessary for development, but it's a thing that we've associated with a male-female dynamic, right? So we see it in other spaces, in other countries, men will hug, but we don't do it. And so one of the consequences of that is that we then associate the female body with physical touch, and it just becomes that, and that leads to all sorts of problems, right? So it's one of those things to sort of look at, right? And then the other issue for me is that if if someone is listening and hearing this, one of the things that I want them to take away from this is that the things that have happened to them at home, again, they've become home, right? So they are stuck in that space. They are not like that. So I think the work that each person has is to sort of figure out what's happened to them, what do they think they are, and where do they get that? What's informed them saying, vele mina nje, vele mina angaso, vele mina loku naloku angivali nako, vele, vele, vele.
Yeah.
Like, where did you get that? And then sort of try to work your way out of it, particularly if it's an unhealthy thing. And unhealthy things are often easier to spot. They cost you relationships, they cost you friendships,
Yeah.
they take you down a path that you don't want, right?
Yeah.
And then also to deal with stuff. If you don't, stuff deals with you.
Yeah.
And man, we end up in spaces that are not pretty. Like I was saying, we fill up the psychiatric hospitals.
Yeah.
We fill up
The
the
jails.
correctional
Yeah.
spaces, right?
Yeah.
We fill up
the
drug
suicide
houses and
deaths.
dens. We are recorded as completers of suicides. No one
Yeah.
is hearing the stories here in between. So it's that we must start recognizing the need for dealing with that. And then we get out of that rut. Yeah, I'm going to shut up now.
I did say it's been an amazing evening, and thank you for the knowledge, gentlemen. I think you are walking encyclopedias. I know the bank really, really appreciates you. I appreciate you. I've learned a lot. Not yet a father, probably in the next 5, 10, you never. So I'll join the convention on Sunday. I hope you're going to be a father on that father, or you're going to be a pastor on that Father's Day, right? Hopefully. please be patient with me. It is the bank that cares, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do continue commenting. We would like to hear from you. And if you're watching this video in 2039, know very well that God, Standard Bank, and your forefathers took care of your mental health. Good night. Standard Bank can be.